Dinah. Thank you. The 13th power. I have to pause for a moment. You know, in homiletics, Dr. Jerry Brownlee often talked to us about leaving wiggle room for spirit. Well, I'm glad I did. I'm so grateful because when we were preparing the service to come together today, I was thinking about my home church, Unity of Houston. What a spiritual family. We can identify with what those families mean to us. And to turn around and see walking through the door my dear friend, the Associate Minister of Unity Houston, Reverend Mindy Lawrence, walk through the door as a surprise. So I just have to point that out. Mindy, say thank you. We were texting and they were blessing me, and I could see them in one of their management meetings in the office and Howard and doing all the things that they're doing. And Mindy's like, okay, it's all going to be good. And she's here. She's hiding in archives with Eric. So I'm so glad you came in before the service started, not like right at this moment, because I'm like, really? Wow, talking about blow you away. Wow, grateful. Thank you. There was a minister in his church that was so very concerned about finances. There was a lot of deferred maintenance, a lot of bills to pay, salaries, just things that needed to be done. And he was so concerned with this. And every Sunday he would get up and he would mention a little bit, but this particular Sunday he said, okay, you guys, I know I've asked you before to reach deep in your pockets and give more. But this Sunday, I've got to say, I mean, I don't know what else to do. The only thing I can give you in return is, I know how attached you are to the music. You can pick out the next 3 hymns. I hear Claudette giggling. She's going, mm-hmm. So he asked that, and he said, this is what's going to happen, and whoever can give the most this Sunday, that's going to be what I'm going to give you in return. So the offering plates went around, and they came forward, and he was very familiar with looking down at them, and he looked down, and he typically saw coins and ones and some fives and occasionally a 20 or 2. This particular Sunday, there was a crisp $100 bill right in the top of the plate. And he just lit up, and he said, somebody gave a $100 bill. So that has to be the most this Sunday. Please, let us acknowledge you. Let us thank you. Who gave that? And it was just a hush. He said, oh, come on. You can pick out 3 hymns. And finally, in the very back, a little old woman, been there for years, she raised her hand and she said, I did. He said, well, come up front so we can love on you and thank you. So she made her way out of the pew, and he waited. She made her way down the aisle, and he waited. And she got up there, and he put his arm around her, and he said, thank you so much for giving $100. So go ahead, pick out 3 hymns. And she started to blush. She looked out at the congregation, and she pointed out the 3 most handsome men in the crowd. And she said, I'll take him and him and him. And you notice one of the hymns I picked was Dean Ted, because, you know, little points there. We're loving the scruff. Oh my gosh. The 13th power. The 13th power. So many of us may think about the 12 powers. Charles Fillmore described the 12 powers as our divine birthright, divine faculties, an indwelling of God in each and every one of us. 12 expressions of one power, the Christ within each of us. I kind of fell in love with the 12 powers when I started taking those classes, and what they are, they're 12 faculties we all already possess, like faith and love, strength, wisdom, understanding, and they're aligned with colors, and I really liked that. But then I thought about it as I worked through experiences in my own life, how Charles Fillmore wouldn't just be contained by 12 powers, because I discovered one that was truly a power within me, and I know Charles would agree. And that's what became the 13th power for me. The 13th power. The 13th power for me is the power of gratitude. It is a power in which we can use. There's a story I'm going to tell you about an experience in my life, and I mentioned it earlier in the opening that sometimes those events in our lives help show us, we grow from, that show us more about the truth of who we are. A few years ago, my mom had a heart transplant, which is a pretty traumatic event. Can you just, no, don't imagine. But a pretty traumatic event. And it wasn't going quite so well. And through the first year, rejection started happening, and we knew what was happening. We got to talk through the fact that her end of life was coming. This wasn't going to work. At the very same time, she's at St. Luke's Episcopal Hospital in the Houston Med Center, and we're going through this process. At the very same time, I'm the baby of three. I had an older sister and a middle brother, Ernie. And at the very same time, my sister developed a glioblastoma, which is a multiform brain tumor. And she was admitted into MD Anderson Hospital, which is just across the street from St. Luke's Episcopal in the Med Center. So this is the same time. While Mom's going through the end-of-life phase and we are talking through this process, my sister's dealing with this. And when you get diagnosed with that, there's typically 6 months to 9 months of life. So it's pretty traumatic this small family was going through. At the same time, my brother was diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia. And from diagnosis to end of life is usually about a year, so he went through aggressive treatment. Well, it's a cancer center. He's right there on another floor where my sister is. So here I am, the baby, becoming caretaker. And what I like to call is I went into management mode, big time. So I was with Mom, and then I would go to MD Anderson. But the cool thing was that there was this bridge, this glass crosswalk between the two to keep you from going to parking garages, and everybody's crossing all day long. And that became such a sacred space for me, because I would be there with Mom, and I would be making decisions and talking her through stuff. And then I would go across to be with Peggy, my sister, or Ernie. And that crosswalk was where I would be angry. I would sit on a bench. I would cry. I would say, where is God in all of this? The victim consciousness was very much there, and I don't think anybody would blame me for being there. I experienced it. I know what it looks like. But there were times that it was necessary. But you know what? I didn't choose to set up house and live there. But that bridge became a bridge of gratitude. A bridge of gratitude in which I could pause and be with those emotions and those feelings. Stop, pause, be with, and go on and get into my management mode. You know what's amazing during that time period? I also had a very successful commercial real estate career. And I was more successful during that period than ever before. So we all could probably think what I was doing, right? I was getting busy to divert, dealing with what was going on. But you know what? I found a gratitude in that bridge. That gratitude was the in-between of the experiences that was going on, where I could truly pause, collect, and realize the gifts of these lives, the gifts of being in this experience with these precious people in my life at that time. And I used that divine power, that divine ability during those times. A few months ago, I got to experience a beautiful celebration of life for Reverend Dorothy Pearson. Many of you in the room knew or know Dorothy Pearson or her work. And it was an amazing experience because Dorothy was a unity icon. She shared the unity message since 1938 when she began at Silent Unity. Amazing. We were gifted with a book called Keeping Close in Prayer, where she talks about her life and experiences working with her husband Phil, their TV ministry, and all the people she'd worked with. And I was flipping through there, and there was a part she was talking about. There was one of the chapters called Giving Thanks is a Way of Life. I fell in love with that, and I said, yes, it is, Dorothy. Dorothy was living in those pages as I read that. And as I continued reading, she said she discovered a period of time in her life that was a tool for her. And the tool was not being in the victim state of consciousness, where she said, nothing happens to me, everything happens through me. And when she discovered that, she said it wasn't easy to use all the time, but she started using it. She started sharing it. In fact, everybody knew she shared it, and those of you that knew Dorothy, her tenacious personality, she would tell you about it too. So one particular day, she was walking around the house, and she writes in the book that she was being critical or defensive and going on and on about something. And her husband, Phil, looks up at her and he said, now, Dorothy, what have you been saying lately? Nothing happens to you. Everything happens through you. And I can just imagine Dorothy probably turned and gave Phil a look. Because she writes in the book, she said, I began to become very critical or defensive over what I was saying. But I paused in that moment, and I said, thank you. Thank you, Phil. Thank you for checking me on my, what she called her Dorothy stuff. We all get into our stuff, don't we? We're so grateful when people check us on that or call us on that. And it's so simple. Sometimes we make life so complicated it can be so simple. For 15 years, I've had a partner, Troy, who has been with me through so many times, some of the times I just talked about. And let me tell you, he could probably tell you how many times he's checked me on my stuff. And I haven't always said thank you. Sometimes I've gone on to defend my point. Yeah, I can get really soapboxy. But you know, I look at that experience as what Dorothy talked about and what I was talking about in those experiences in life where we can get into that victim state. But that's so beautiful when we can just say thank you from that heart of intention, from where we come from, of thank you. Truly coming from thank you, the people that we meet each and every day. And what I recall from that is in those end-of-life beautiful blessings I had with my mom, my sister Peggy, my brother Ernie, I had the blessing, gift, to be with them consciously through their last breaths, to talk to each other. Now, I know what you can imagine. We were saying lots of I love yous, but you know what I remember the most were the thank yous. How much they thanked me for being there, and how much I thanked them in return for all the gifts they had given me, the foundation they had given me. And that actual experience now, was I truly seeing gratitude in all those moments? Oh my gosh, no. But when you can go away a while or go into that bridge and you can reflect, oh my gosh, what gratitude to be able to have that experience with them and all the love that we shared. It is the power of gratitude. Eckhart Tolle wrote that it is through gratitude for each and every present moment that the spiritual dimension of life opens up. Through each and every present moment that the spiritual dimension of life opens up. Now think about that. Think of the moments that have already passed since we've all been together here. Moments are like that. I mean, there they go. There they're going. But like the song said, like the air I breathe, if we can become into the practice of using a power like just breathing, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. As a yoga teacher, I teach that in class, and we get into the breathing mode. For those of you that have done yoga or experienced yoga, where we're breathing into a thank you mode. But just as soon as that hour's over, I mean, we're heading to the car, we're checking our phones, and we're going right back to busy. Because that's what happens is it's every single present moment that Eckhart Tolle is talking about, that if we get into that practice of breathing into the thank you and the gratitude, I do believe a spiritual dimension of life opens up. We start seeing things a little bit differently. Our words that we use like thank you are powerful. It's like that drop of rain that hits the ocean and ripples out. Just the words that we can say when we truly come from an intention of thank you. Thank you. Can change the world. This reminds me of a story of a little boy. It was so very close, 6 years old, so very close to the elderly couple that lived next door. And the gentleman had just recently lost his wife. The little boy knew this. And one Saturday morning, he looked out the window and he saw the old man sitting on the porch with his head in his hands. And he made a decision. He got dressed, put on his coat, walked out the door, went next door, walked up on the porch, crawled up in his lap and sat there. Well, his mom was busy around the house, and she looked out the window several times, and she thought, wonder what he's up to over there. And she checked on him. He'd been over there quite a while. A little while later, the little boy came home, took off his coat, and went about his business, going to play or doing whatever. And she said, hey, what did you say to him? What did you do over there? The little boy said, oh, nothing. I just helped him cry. You see, there was a heart exchange that day. Because when the little boy left the porch, the old man looked at him and said, in his grief, "Thank you." Now the little boy, in his limited vocabulary at 6 years old, looked at the old man and in return just repeated his words and said, "Thank you." Now, the old man thought, "Dang me, I've sat here and cried. What have I done?" He was perplexed by the little boy's reply, "Thank you." And so the old man said, "Thank me for what?" And the little boy said, "For showing me what love looks like. I miss her too." You see the power of the simplicity, the profoundness of thank you. Thank you. I can promise you, those two lives and everyone that came in contact with them going forward would never be the same from that simple healing heart exchange. When I'm grateful for all of it, when we are grateful for all of it, our perspective on everything in life changes. Yes? You agree, doesn't it? When I'm grateful for all of it, the joys, the successes, the sorrows, what we may see as failures, it shows us the gifts in each and every piece of it. Now, the joys and the successes, we do that all the time. We see that stuff and we're like, "Yes, I am grateful. I am so grateful." Yes, because all these wonderful things happen. But then the sorrows are what we label or may deem as failures. Now, where's the gratefulness in that? What can we see in that? Because we get caught up in that stuff. Well, we see the gift of compassion that we have for others, and most especially for ourselves. Give ourselves a break sometimes, yeah? Yeah. Love up on ourselves. Have some compassion. God is in all of it, every piece of it. Because we are in all of it. And we are all expressions of God. There are many scripture verses in which we could pull out and use about praise and thanksgiving and gratitude. But keeping it simple into the thank you, what resonates and is so special to me is from Colossians chapter 3, verse 15, which Paul is speaking, writing, "And let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts, to which indeed you were all called." You were all called in one body. "And be thankful." And be thankful. You see what the power there for me is? It's in the "and." It reminds me of that bridge that I discussed earlier, that bridge, that in between. Paul is not writing from a skipping through the daisies, sunshine and rainbows time. He's writing from prison. It's early Christianity. This is not joyous occasions, but yet he's reaching out and writing letters to people there's new religions coming about, and what they were hanging on to or touching was Jesus that was no longer there. And he's saying, but remember, let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts. We understand that at Unity, that Christ within, that Christ presence. I do. Do you? The Christ presence within. And just the knowing of that. Can't hold it, touch it, feel it. But just the knowing of that is where the power is, the "and be thankful." Yes. Our co-founder, and I think she's got a lot of my heart that I connect with so much, is Myrtle Fillmore. Myrtle Fillmore basically healed herself through praise and thanksgiving. Affirmations of gratitude, blessing every cell of her body. She discovered a power. She discovered an amazing power of gratitude. Rather than condemn her body or continue the belief system that she had been told as a little girl, that her body was becoming sick and failing, rather than believing all of that, she decided to change her mind. For many of you may know, and those of you that don't, Myrtle and Charles Fillmore in 1886 were on a quest to save her life. She wasn't just a sick woman. This was a woman that was dying. Charles and Myrtle Fillmore were seeking out a way to save her life. They attended a lecture. Many of you may be familiar with the lecture by E.B. Weeks, in which she heard the words, "Therefore I am a child of God, and I do not inherit sickness." Okay, now Charles Fillmore sitting at the same lecture, and, who knows? Maybe it didn't hit him quite the same way. But it certainly did for Myrtle. It certainly did, because she went home with that. And in 1886, it wasn't an overnight success. She didn't wake up the next morning saying, "Therefore I'm a child of God, and I do not inherit sickness," and bam, she's well. What is written is that it was 1888. It was a 2-year process. Myrtle began action. She began changing her thoughts. She began changing her belief system. She began changing her diet. She began changing everything about herself. Charles caught on too. People caught on. Because we're all sitting here today. It grew out of that. Myrtle's healing letters, and people weren't coming around until after they saw what was happening with her. It was action steps that she took in her life with the power of gratitude, loving on the body that she was giving and loving it all well. And she was grateful. A couple of years later, it's written in 1888, Myrtle had a full healing. She wrote in her healing letters, I love this, "Our first duty is to bless our body, to praise its wonderful work, to learn what its needs are and supply them." To learn what its needs are and supply them. To praise our body, to thank it. Wherever it is, here and now, we say thank you. And we begin that work and that self-talk. Beautiful story. The unity movement is built. We are built on affirmative prayers and the power of gratitude. Charles Fillmore, her husband, co-founder of Unity, would not be surprised, as research today is proving, statistics are proving, the research on gratitude thinking, how we reap emotional and healthy rewards from that. People report fewer illnesses, have an optimal outlook on their life, and an optimal outlook on health and well-being changes our course and our pattern in everything that we do. The research on gratitude shows that we all have a set point, and a set point is somewhat of a place where we dwell typically most of the time. We all have one that's different. And that's where we typically are. And then when these joyous things happen to us, we move up to another degree. And then when the grief, loss, tragedy, the things, the yuck happens in our life, we move to another point. So we go to these different places. But we don't stay in either one for long because we go back to whatever our set point is, wherever we typically are. But what the research is showing is that as people work on their gratitude each and every day, like the air that I breathe, the thank you, the being thankful for where we are, as we work on that, we move our set point up by degrees, more and more. It can be done with practice. Sign me up, yeah? Let's get to work on it. It sounds easy. Okay, practice gratitude. So then why aren't we skipping through the rainbows and sunshine every day and going, yay, just it's all wonderful. Yeah. Because we don't have those experiences of the joys and the successes all the time and the tragedies and the stuff that takes there. We're in the mundane, the day-to-day, busy. We're busier than ever. I mean, we're on our phones. We're going through schedules. We're going. So we're rushing around in the mundane. That's what we're talking about. To live in the gratitude, the thankfulness of each and every moment. And there are ways in which we can move our set point up by degrees. There's ways in which we can start right now, today. And it's practice. Myrtle modeled it very well. Practice, day-to-day practice. I'm sure with anything, I think you all agree on this, everything takes practice, yes? I'm sure Dr. Jesse Tanner did not march out of the womb thumping the bass fiddle and playing the way he does on an upright bass. I'm sure it took some practice. Yeah, hours. And our beloved Robert Brummett, I'm sure he didn't spend his entire life learning how to go to contemplative prayer and long extended meditations, which he continues to work on. I'm sure it took practice. It took practice to extend that and learn how to go and just be with oneself and experience all that there is to experience. Practice. So, let's move that set point forward. Yeah? Okay, there's a few things that we can do to do that, and we can begin doing some of those today. Easy steps to remember. And one, I love this, audible and visual reminders. Now, I'm a big sticky note freak, and I always have been. I have them everywhere, on my visor, on the car, on the visor in the car, on the window, on the mirror, in the closet, just to remind me of things. And sometimes it just says gratitude with a question mark to make me stop and go, oh yeah, I'm rushing around here in just gratitude. When I was talking about this particular talk, the power of gratitude, the 13th power, Reverend Kelly Isola, she's Miss Techie. She said, you know there's a gratitude app. And I didn't. I don't have a lot of apps on my phone because I get confused with what they are and how to use them, and I want to keep it simple. But I downloaded one just about a month ago. When I there's many that are for free. When I downloaded it, it's on the front of the phone. It's on, what's it called? The home screen. See? See, Dr. Tom, why I don't play with PowerPoints too often. So it's on the home screen, and when I first downloaded it, it was there. You just tap on that, and probably within the first hour, I had 19 to 20 little just text entries of just things that I were noticing and experiencing, because it's right there with me all the time. So not so much for Post-it notes anymore. I have an app. So get you an app. A wonderful way to move that set point. A second way in which we can move our set point is partnering. The power, prayer partners. Miraculous, wonderful things happen when we partner. When we show up for classes, when we show up to go to a workout class or attend an exercise class, it's accountability because we're showing up at a certain time. So why not gratitude partnering? Spend a few minutes on the phone. Mindy and I have done this, to have some gratitude time just where you can share how gratitude has shown up in your life this week and move on. It doesn't have to take a lot of time, but it creates a power in that. Now, the third one I saved for last because it's probably the most difficult one. It's the one Myrtle models so beautifully. Changing that self-talk. That loop, that track that we get on, like, oh, the whiny, the this, the that, the la 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 that we get into. Well, you know what? It's going to show up. I've kind of come to accept that stuff just happens. We get busier and busier in life and in the world. And what showed up for me most recently, as I'll give you an example, is at the end of, for the students that are in the room, the end of last term, when you're going, oh, can I get it all done? And then, we go to this break, this Christmas break. And what does the Christmas season do? Yeah, trying to get it all done, and so I'm going from one rushy thing to another rushy thing. And I realized that kept coming up. How am I going to get it all done? I've got this to do, and I've got to be back here. And, I live in Houston, and I'm here for school, and I want to see everybody. And so use that as your reminder. When that pops up, at Unity, there's a tool we use called Denials and Affirmations. What a perfect opportunity. So it's going to come up and say, okay, thank you. Now. And what I started using for this one is I have all the time to do all that is mine to do. Thank you. So when it comes up, whatever it may be, just recognize it. Say, hey, thank you. Thank you for the reminder. Now, reframe and bless. Bless it. Each day, each and every day, let's commit to moving our set point forward by degrees. Practicing this amazing 13th power. This power of gratitude that runs in and through us. We already possess it. We use it. Let's just enable it to come forward and just give it more and more power. I believe that the rest of one's life, and we're in the now moment, right now, can be the absolute best of one's life through this additional 13th power, the power of gratitude. Blessings to each and every one of you. Thank you. Namaste.